So some good-hearted start to kick this off. Love you. Good luck. Have fun. Of course, it is coming out of the mouth of the guy spawning here, bottom right side of Frozen Temple. It's going to be the red Terran player, Drunkenboi. And in the upper left, it is going to be his opponent, and in my opinion, one of the best damn protests there are outside of Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, Neeb. Now, I don't know what it means to coma somebody, but Coma is another player from North America who would actually join the lobby temporarily, and I believe is either current or at least former teammate of Drunkenboi. The thing I was going to comment on, though, is Drunkenboi has, for years, been a bit of an interesting player to cast, because he's done weird builds, he's done mech, he's done not mech, you name it, Drunkenboi's tried it. And I think one of the big things for him that I look into going in this is whether he'll be using tanks or not. Now, a big part of this question stems from actually not his play, because I have not seen a lot of Drunkenboi, but from a player in Europe named Botvinnik, who's actually been using a lot of really scary marine tank pushes, which I'm sure have probably got their own versions here in North America. But Drunkenboi, I should be talking about Neeb, but the last thing to comment on was, like, he's not one of the people I would have expected to make the top 16 cut for this. But for those who don't know how this was determined and how invites and players got selected, it was based off of a ladder ranking, however you want to say that. So the top 16 players on the North American ladder last night, as of like midnight, I think it was like Eastern, or I'm not sure if it was Eastern or Pacific. Point is, at a certain time clock, the cut was made, the screenshot got taken, and these guys made the cuts. So Drunkenboi obviously can win some games of StarCraft 2. And when you've got a lot of other players competing for those same spots, you know he's not playing. Neeb as well, by the way. This goes for both. But you know that they're not playing against rando, low master, high GM. Like, it's actually other players playing. Like, they're probably running into Scarlet and Huck and all the other guys that are trying to qualify and compete as well. By the way, shout out to Scarlet and Huck. They're playing against each other right now on the DreamHack mainstream. I actually don't know who's covering the matches caster-wise, but it's on the DreamHack mainstream. So if you guys want to see that match, you can check that out. We very well may follow the winner of this. We might swap series afterwards. I'm actually a little unfamiliar in how format's going to go, but I do know some rounds and some matches are going to be held for us, so that way we get to cast quite a few games tonight. Ideally, at least. But at any rate, Reaper opening doesn't really lead into anything too much. The nice thing about Frozen Temple is there's a lot of ways to get in and scout. You don't get choked out and you won't get auto-adepted. Thank you to Kobo Terran for the 5-month resub. Back at home, though, Drunkenboi not opting to go for anything too crazy. I mean, with an expansion down, that already says a lot about a Terran player. One base builds are insanely strong versus Protoss who don't expect them. The fact that he's gone for a 2-base build still doesn't rule out all-in rules for Terran. I know it sounds funny to say it like that, but if you guys have watched enough of our Korean games with people like Reality and others, you'll know that 2-base builds are actually... they will go all in, and they can be very scary. But meanwhile for Neeb, back at home, actually, I guess I should remark that we did have a Robo come down, and he's prepared for this opening that is super sweet versus, say, Widowmine drops, which is probably like the most common Terran opener. It gets across the map in time to scout, it does a bit of damage, cool beans. But we have Disruptors, I think, on deck for this, and Neeb is somebody who's been doing a lot of Disruptor play, and Disruptor drops, more importantly, and making them look really good in the process, taking on people like Polt and others. But Drunkenboi did put a tech lab on the factors, expecting to see a couple Widowmines, but I guess he's going to go Marine heavy with a 1 Widowmine drop. Kind of cool tactics are, you drop the Widowmine on one side, the probes get pulled, you drop the Marines on the other, and vice versa. But either way, a little bit supply block, so it's... Oh, it was a Cyclone. So Cyclones are really good for opening defense. I was going to say, it's a little bit past that point where you'd need one, so decides to go for the Siege Tank instead, and this is, I think, a little more expected. 3rd CC also coming down. But War Prism speed starts, and we got a Disruptor on the way. And the most frustrating thing about dealing with this is just keeping up with a War Prism. That speed boost is pretty hard to deal with. Thank you to FFerson for the 12-month resub, and congrats on your 1-year resub to BaseTradeTV. Make sure to send us a message later. But the pylon's going to get overcharged. It's a little bit janky because, of course, if you want to get that medevac out alive, you got to pull it back right away. He's going to focus down the pylon. It's a very interesting choice. It will depower 2 of the gateways, so it's a little... I mean, it's okay damage, but this was certainly not worth losing a full drop worth of units, I believe. And this actually will reveal the Disruptor too. So that takes care of the Widowmine. I think now Drunkenboi's going to know. And for the record, guys, I think it's Puck and Neeb are the only 2 players I can think of off the top of my head who semi-regularly do this, where they'll go for disruptor drops. So Drunkenboi has to have some idea that this is coming. And this is where that Cyclone actually gets really nice. So he started to make one, hesitated, went back to siege tanks, which were going to be for, I think, a really cool marine tank push. But the problem with this is that Warp Prism. Like I said, getting that lock on, you can actually get a pretty good amount of hits on it before it gets out of range, and sometimes kill it, especially if it takes any marine or wind ion or missile turret fire. There's a Liberator to help with this too, but the disruptors... it's unfortunate we're not seeing Polt in this. No offense to Drunkenboi. I only reference this because Polt is the only Terran player I've seen that makes it look like disruptors aren't good. His splits are so excellent when it comes to dealing with these things, but we'll see if Drunkenboi's got that same level of chops. He's not playing mech, by the way. He is going full into bio if you didn't see the statement comment Shell's researching, so that'd be kind of cool to see. Neeb, on the other hand, does take a third base back on his side of the field. And just kind of comfortably playing macro. It is a bit of an odd map to actually take that third on. I don't think the third is so difficult to secure, but your fourth is what really comes into question later on. Liberator also going to push this back. A nice missile turret placement out of Drunkenboi. So Neeb actually doesn't get anything out of this disruptor drop combo so far. In fact, Drunkenboi is going to just go and take that third. Feeling pretty confident in the situation. SCV trying not to die. Very unfortunate. Still goes down. Cyclone's going to get popped off here. That's actually pretty unfortunate. I don't actually know if a Cyclone... I was about to say it could, but I don't know for certain that a Cyclone can outrun the disruptor shot. It is that Purifier Nova or whatever it's called is so incredibly just fast. It's why you don't stim. Oh, who was it? Igas in the beta was actually one of the few players who figured it out early and realized like you could never stim to outrun a disruptor. You would always just have to like pick up, and we've seen other people do different tactics. But the SCVs here are going to take some hits. Nothing too devastating, but 4 go down, so it looks scarier than it was. The Warp Prism continues to be quite annoying. Folks in chat asking about Zombie Grub. Yeah, just confirming she's visiting her sickly grandmama. Actually, I don't know if she's sickly, but her grandma this weekend. So she's going to be out of town for, I think, till Tuesday, something like that. So there's quite a bit of casting going on this weekend. You can find most of it on our calendar on our website, but it's going to be Fear Dragon joining me for most of it. Or solo. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, this setup at the top of the ramp's kind of scary. That's almost too many stalkers, I think, for Drunkenboi to deal with. He doesn't have +1 weapon timing for this. It's one Liberator stand against the masses. He'll catch a couple of stalkers that blinked out of position, and that's kind of nice, but, I mean, truth be told, this is an army of Marines and a couple of siege tanks. When it comes to, like, an A-move scenario, we've seen, like, Marauders tear through stalker counts. We've seen them focus fire on top of disruptors, but that's not going to happen here. He just doesn't have it in him. Bunkers are coming down. This is actually going to be kind of cool to see. A bit of a Hail Mary move, if you will. Kind of desperate. I don't actually know that bunkers will hold up too well, because disruptors do damage buildings, unlike Liberators. They're also going to find the south side of this, where Drunkenboi's not ready to go. Marines stimming for their lives. A couple do get blasted away. Command started getting focused by those stalkers. This forces that fight, forces the push, and disruptors honestly not getting great hits. At the same time, though, Drunkenboi doesn't take too severe of losses. His +1 weapons did finish up, but he's getting 2 Liberators at a time. And while Disruptors certainly look really strong with Mass Blink Stalkers right now, Disruptors are what makes people on tilt in this matchup, and Disruptors are going to be a nice thing to have available to him here. Looks like Neeb's going to push out for a 4th base while this goes on. Just continues to pressure that front. I mean, the nice thing about Blink Stalkers is you do have quite the ability to disengage. You find yourself in a slightly unfavorable position, you just blink away and try and turn back home. But, yeah, I mean, for Drunkenboi, he's kind of held to a point. The problem with Liberators is they're still not the end-all, be-all. I like this drop coming here to the north side. Neeb, who have been putting a lot of pressure on his opponent's side of the field, it's just a little bit awkward. Drunkenboi wasn't sure what he wanted to do. I think focusing the pylon, but misclicking just slightly with that move command made this all kinds of awkward. He's going to try and focus down the Nexus. I actually don't know if he's got the damage to do this with the rest of the Blink Stalkers coming here. It's going to be tight. It's going to be close. They focus the Medivacs to make sure there's no escape, and he does kill the Nexus. But Neeb's already on 4 bases, and I don't know if that's necessarily going to have been worth it. Also want to note, Neeb's had an observer sitting over top of most of Drunkenboi's army for a majority of this game, so he's kind of known what he was going to be fighting against. It's not like he built anything blind. It's not like he built anything stupid. Thank you, Mr. Kunle, for the 3-month resub. Stalkers going to try and catch some of these units. They'll trade up for a few of the Stalkers, which isn't too bad considering just how expensive Stalkers are. So this isn't terrible because you got the Medivacs back out alive. But The question still remains, how are you going to deal with these Liberators as Neeb? He might be thinking later on, heading towards things like Tempest and getting that Stargate play, but for now, and the time being, Blink Stalkers alone won't cut it. They're going to have to blink into Tank Fire, into Marauder Fire. They don't know if there's Widow Mines underneath this. I'm actually surprised Drunkenboi's in as good of a position as he is. I guess I'll describe it like that. SCVs get pulled, but that's a little too far away. The turret actually gets focused, so now there's a little bit more space for that Warp Prism to maneuver. Thank you, Cable Leg, for the 15-month resub. And while you guys are being awesome in chat, I just want to note we got a Fusion Core coming down. Now, the Fusion Core, as much as I want to get hyped up and start selling you guys in battle cruisers, I think we do all know is strictly for Liberator range. Decent trades going around the map. Looks like we got a drop up there in the north as well. Going to try and focus on yet another Nexus. So Drunkenboi, maybe he realized I had referenced Polt earlier. I wanted to show us just how much he can be just like Polt with these constant base snipes. Not really turning too much into the income of Neeb, however, and really not getting him too many gains in this game. But it is buying him a lot of time. And a big part of this, of course, is surviving. Now, we do have the Fleet Beacon on the way. We get the extra Stargates on the way. But this is a question that I can't even give you, like, as a caster or even a player, like, an objective answer for. And it's like, how do you deal with Tempest when this comes into play? And the best thing we've seen so far is complacency out of both players. Like, it really feels like once you get to this late stage of the game, even though this is becoming a lot more common in a lot of the games we've been casting, it's still not been entirely figured out. Like, there's no easy counter to this from the Terran player. Lots of Vikings don't necessarily hold up. Lots of Liberators don't have the actual damage, despite their splash, to take on huge Tempest clumps. And especially with Stalkers firing at them from below. For the most part, we've seen a lot of Marines be the best answer, but the problem is, as we see, we got heavy Marauder production. There's a lot of focus on those Stalkers. A lot of Marines might not be made. And between a couple of storms here and there, should Neeb go that direction, a couple of decent engagements, I mean, you'll remove the anti-air from play, and there just won't be the Marines to shoot those Tempests. Liberators are going to get picked off by some of the Stalkers, not without trading pretty decently, though. Tears through that Stalker count on Neeb. That went from almost no Stalkers lost this game up to like 30 very quickly. Liberators taking the charge. Tempests are on the way, but they're still pretty far out, and I mean, this is not exactly getting better for Neeb. He does have 2-2 for his upgrades, which isn't too shabby, and plus 3's finishing shortly, but as we see, sacrifices a single Stalker to pick off that one really low-health Liberator. Gets another one, that shot barely fires, and Neeb now on the defensive front. Tempests finally come into play, though, and the best thing about these Tempests, of course, are going to be the range in which they bring. As people remark about game sounds, I'll have to look into that in a moment. Can't really adjust it now on the fly, because it's going to require my sound mixer be tweaked and twerked, but I'll take a look and see what the levels are. There should be sounds. I'm hearing them. I hope you guys are hearing them. Anyways, shots getting fired. Liberators are slowly being torn apart. And this is a position where Drunkenboi wants to advance forward, but he knows he can't due to his low count of Marines. You'll notice he's also kind of cut Marauder production a bit and started using some of these Tech Lab barracks to build Marines, recognizing that this is in fact the problem. While this goes on, he has sanctioned a small attack on the left side, waiting to go in. Picking off Stargates are actually going to be really nice, discussing that Tempest production. I guess if you can't kill 7 Tempests, it's good to kill the Stargates that would produce those 7 Tempests. There's going to be a lot of overcharges. This Mothership Core going to go ham in a moment. Medevacs do fly away because he doesn't want to have to produce new ones. Mothership Core also gets focused down, but those... Oh, God. Double Stargates going down is really going to cut in production here for Neeb. He also expands towards the top right. What? Quay? Not exactly the direction we've seen a lot of these Frozen Temple games go. In fact, most of them barely make it past that 4th, or 5th even. But 1, 2, 3, 4, and here we go towards that 5th. Oracle constantly casting Revelation on the army is just absolutely fantastic. Where there's a lack of storms, there are Liberators, or sorry, excuse me, Disruptors. I keep calling them Liberators. There are Disruptors, and that's going to make it so these Marines can't just clump up, A, move, and go forward. But I think one of the problems here really is, like, Neeb is getting pressure, or getting that pressure he's been looking for all game. You know, he's picking off these medevacs one at a time. The Tempest shots, they fire so slow, but they go without recourse. We do have the stim to win coming in. Oh, those disruptor hits are like giant-ass banelings. They're picking off so many of the Marines, and the Marauders barely live through this. If they can take out the Stalkers, the Marines might just power through afterwards. A couple of Vikings in the sky will take out most of the Tempest, and with the Tempest being gone, Bio's going to have a much better chance to fight, but, you know, it's 3-2 on the upgrades for both sides of this. It's not looking like a clear-cut victory for either one, but Neeb's army is looking bigger. It's looking better. Drunkenboi's got to fall back to some of his tanks. 2 Tempest is actually pretty low damage. It will take quite a few shots to even kill that of a siege tank, so this isn't so shabby right now, but you just, for both players, don't have a lot on the ground. Those disruptors, one good disruptor hit kills what little bio there is left. New reinforcements of stalkers reaching that front line. Blinks to the right side, trying to dodge these shots from the tanks. But it does look like that might just be a little bit too much. Well, this was a well-fought game out of Drunkenboi. I think it's right now just falling apart on him. There's just not enough production or money to keep up with this. So game 1 is going to go to Neeb. Thank you, Axhead15, for the 3-month resub as well. Big love. Thank you, sir. Somebody Shan asking why I'm bothering to shout out subs during the game. Because, well, welcome to BaseTradeTV, man. If it's your first time here, I hope you follow the channel. Come back for more in the future. But we do things a little bit different. If you're expecting professionalism, despite... You have to understand, I'm dressed professionally, ironically, tonight. Like, that's the type of channel this is. So please, please, please check yourself before you get upset in chat. Dusk Towers is going to be the second map. I'm going to get this hosted here ASAP. We'll hold off on ads for a little bit, because I don't want to keep the players waiting for too long. And I'll take a look at my mixer in just a moment. I got to get everyone back in here, though. Where's Neeb? And Drunkenboi. And O Gaming. Of course, feels good to see this many people tuning in for a solo cast. Makes me feel a little bit more confident about what's going on. So thank you guys for joining us tonight. Again, Fear Dragon's actually going to be joining me when he gets home from work, so that the silly gif is just a placeholder more than anything else. But players are ready. Let's hop into it. Dusk Towers. Wait, where's the intro? Oh no. Ooh, I've got this loaded somewhere. There we go. See you in a sec. Alright, game number 2 in this best of 5. Spawning in the bottom left side of Dusk Tower. He currently leads 1-0 in the series. It is going to be the red Protoss on Fire's Neeb. And a quick note before he introduces his opponent, I really want to see On Fire like become an actual team. Just throwing that out there. In the upper right, though, playing for Flipside Tactics. Whoops, as I press those wrong buttons. It is going to be the blue Terran Drunkenboi. And I'm just going to say this before we get into the thick of things. Drunkenboi actually looked pretty nice in that game. I know I came into this with a little bit of a bias towards Neeb, and I definitely still stand by that opinion that Neeb is my favorite personally to take this series. But Drunkenboi did not put up a bad game. In fact, there was a couple of moments there where it looked a little bit dicey for Neeb when I expected that to be a very, very one-sided game. So maybe that was just... you know, the one game, and maybe Drunkenboi looks terrible in the rest, or maybe he looks even better going forward. I don't know, but I do know that Neeb is definitely not going to be taking it too easy trying to finish off this series. Let's also not forget that this is a double elimination, so if your favorite player gets knocked out right now, like let's say you're cheering for Neeb or Drunkenboi, don't fret too much. You will still have a chance to see them later. Just, I'm not sure if that's playing tonight. Again, I'm unfortunately not fully aware of how the format's going to go for this, because it's slightly different than the EU version, but I believe we're going to be casting at least half the matches today, and then we're supposed to cast the other half tomorrow. So we won't see the winner of this whole like winners bracket tonight. We won't see the winner of the losers bracket tonight. That's sort of a deal. Quick question asking, are you casting Pulse games? That's a maybe. I don't actually know. So the cool thing is we're priority 2 tonight. So for example, if we want to cast Pulse games, it's not impossible for us to do so. But truth be told, I'm really not like I know a lot of you guys love Pult, and I promise you I've got no bias against Pult, okay? But there's actually some players here today who I think are actually better than Pult and have had results to prove it, Neeb being specifically one of them. So that's why I wanted to see Neeb right off the bat and see how he does today. I do think Pult versus No Regrets a great matchup, but I believe, don't quote me on this, I think Naniwa and Morrow are covering that. Someone said Nathanius. Unfortunately, when there's just one of us casting and not 2, I can't really have the luxury to tab out to Team Liquid and check so frequently. So if one of our mods could link or let people know, that'd be fantastic. But regardless, we will see good games tonight because all the players playing are frankly good, and I'm not too worried about missing out on anything amazing, especially with so many streams covering this for the coverage. But anyways, getting back into the game, we've got a Stargate opener out of Neeb once again, and I don't think this Stargate opener is anything too scary. Usually it's an Oracle first, then maybe some Phoenix, and if it goes to Phoenix, that's something to talk about. But meanwhile, back at home, I mean, actually, once that Oracle comes over here, it might die to the Widowmine, but Neeb might also, seeing a Widowmine, result in making a Phoenix. Because the nice thing about Phoenix for home defense is they can scoop up Widowmines before they even get a chance to burrow, they can chase off medevacs. They're actually pretty fantastic early game units, but have definitely found some struggles when it comes to dedication. And I guess we'll talk more on that as if we head that direction with the game. Now, this full wall off at the front's a little bit funny to see, but it did keep the Adept out and was a little bit annoying as Drunkenboi's supply depot did take some damage, but didn't have to lose any Marines. Magic number, of course, is 6. You want exactly 6 Marines to deal with an Oracle. That Widowmine, where is it burrowed? Oh, in the natural. Alright. So the Oracle might see the Marine count here in the main and go to the natural and hope for nothing to be there, but there's that Widowmine waiting. Not going to be too investing into a drop, though, as this is actually purely a defensive opener out of Drunkenboi. Not only did he not go for a medevac and go for a Liberator, he's gone for a Cyclone. Now, the Liberator, you could argue, is actually an offensive opening and say, okay, he's going to take this across the map, and he'll deny some mining, perhaps. But pylons being down where they are, one missing from the natural back here, it's really not going to be too hard for your Neeb to defend. It's also worth noting we got 2 Oracles. I didn't realize he had made a second one. It's just so unconventional to see unless one dies. But, yeah, Stasis Ward getting set up. That's going to be one bit of denial. Cyclone is going to get some decent shots. And the Liberator tries to chase this out, but the Oracle is going to be a little bit too fast, so not going to quite catch anything. Also, gonna give a little bit of a shout out, although I hesitate to call it a shout out. Haley B on Twitter, I know she's tweeted pictures of this before, wearing the hoi 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 shirt. Oh gosh. I actually, if you guys didn't see my tweet from earlier, I was digging through some boxes and I had forgot somebody had donated for us to order like 5 or 6 mediums to give away at an event. So as much as I really reluctantly will be doing so, if you're at DreamHack Austin, I'm gonna have 5 or 6 of those ugly ass t-shirts to give away to anyone that doesn't already have one. Ugh. Anyways, Liberator going to be chasing around the Oracles for a small time. Back at home for Neeb. What he's got going for him, though, is combination of +1 and those resonating glaives. A very interesting dynamic in the matchup right now, where if you're using Adepts in any capacity prior to combat shields being in play, +1 is actually your best friend, because it'll let you 2-shot the Marines again and 2-shot SCVs again instead of 3 shots. However, Resonating Glaives becomes more important later on as the attack speed helps chew through the combat shields. Lots of Phoenix did get made. I guess I did mention we talk about this should we see them come into play. Phoenix have been a little bit funky and a little bit frustrating to deal with. There's some pros and cons to this, though. Funny thing is the Cyclone is technically safe for now, but he is going to lose it to the Phoenix. Giant cons to these Phoenix, though, are that you typically have openings that, that requires dedication. You're not going to have a bunch of Adepts on the ground. And if Drunkenboi was intentionally doing a 2-base build, which he is, then this is something that can sometimes just push through in power. Because the Phoenixes are very limited in what they can do in terms of what they can grab thanks to that energy limitation of the Graviton Beam. But coming across the map, Drunkenboi's going to have a Raven, which is kind of neat to see. Point defense drone, maybe. Auto turrets, certainly. But this army that he plans to push with is actually good enough to kill people straight up. Now, it's a little bit frustrating to look at a glance, because if you are, of course, just a Terran with a bias like myself, you'll be like, great, a Protoss player with 3 bases, opened up with the Stargate, a little bit greedy, but nothing too greedy, can still get an army size this big? The answer is yes. But Adepts aren't what they used to be, and a mass Adept army like this is honestly not the most terrifying thing in the world, unless Drunkenboi gets ahead of himself. He's got to be careful with that. Siege tanks are going to be huge for help with some of the splash. A Widowmine goes here as well. That Raven, how does he plan to use the Raven is my biggest question. No follow through on the Adepts. He does cancel them and doesn't want to engage here yet. Splash damage from the tanks is going to help a bunch. Phoenix is going to probably try and Graviton beam them in the back end, I'd imagine, but that Raven, how are you planning to use this Raven, sir? Tanks get a decent volley, strips a lot of the shields away. If this engagement wants to go down, it's actually probably going to favor Drunkenboi as he puts those tanks up on the high ground. Auto turrets are going to be the weapon of choice here. They do a lot of damage and they soak a lot of hits. They also take priority targeting on auto attacks. So Neeb, unfortunately, wasting a lot of shots on auto turrets. Liberator coming in the backside, and these Marines are not doing too badly. 70 army supply over 48, though. Starts pushing this back. Those tanks get those last couple of shots, and they live no less. One of these tanks with like less than a bar of health continuing to push through into the natural base. Is there a mothership core in sight? Here she comes with a couple overcharges. Going to help out this tank with 2 health. Not going to live for too long, if anything even looks at it funny. But of course, they're going to have that range to chip away at the pylons. Maybe pick these off. Drunkenboi's going to just rally troops across the map. Adepts are going to try and transfer right on top of the tanks. This could go badly. This could go well. I mean, this Widowmine's going to try and pop. Doesn't quite get the shots. Picks up the tanks. Keeps them alive. Marine's going to fight against the Adepts. Marine's going to win against the Adepts. Down to 20 army supply. Neeb's relying on some warpins. He's relying on these overcharges to keep him in this game. But Drunkenboi, as long as he doesn't get too greedy, doesn't dive in and doesn't ignore overcharges, he should be good to go. Picks up that tank, knowing that his opponent was trying to bait him, almost with some friendly fire on top of this. But Drunkenboi's looking pretty good in this spot. Still rallying across the map, missing a single siege tank. No inclination of a third whatsoever, because if he needs to mine out, he's just going to transfer that main over to that third. And this is not looking too bad whatsoever. Oracles are still a bit of a problem. They're going to bring some damage to the party. Adepts are scary as well. He's going to try and put them into the Liberator range. That's kind of a cool move. Tanks in the air. I mean, they're not shooting the Adepts on the ground. Lots of those tanks were low. He tried to pick those up, but picks up the Marines instead. Gets a little bit awkward with control there for Drunkenboi. +1 armor did finally finish up for Neeb, so he's got that much going for him. A Void Ray on the way is going to help out a ton when it comes to dealing with these Liberators. And the question really is, will Drunkenboi lose out on the momentum he's gained from this engagement? He does continue to press forward. Another overcharge buys just a little bit more time. But that siege tank in the main missing from this is kind of huge. Finally grabs hold of it. Finally realizes such an important unison missing. One of the rare times you encourage a player, please F2! But the army supply from Neeb, while still lower, has been starting to catch back up. You know, it was down to 20 before, up to 46. He's got tech out the wazoo. That Void Ray, if it prismatically aligns, is going to melt a Liberator. It'll pick off a siege tank. He's trying to stay outside the photon overcharge, but there's no overcharge for this. The Marines quite just barely don't have the damage for it without the assistance of the Liberator, without the assistance of the tank. And this is where momentum starts shifting heavily. If Drunkenboi cannot win this here, he will lose the game. A big part of this is that third base mining is going to continue even more powerfully afterwards. I do love this Widowmine coming in. That's going to help against Adepts. If they transfer on top of this, it's going to hit them all like a giant EMP and get a good chunk of splash damage. Well, tank's getting shots. That overcharge does get popped. The mothership core finally goes down, so he knows he won't have to worry about any more for a time. Void Ray was a little out of position. If Drunkenboi had seen that, may have been able to pounce, but a couple Marauders mixed in is going to make it a little bit more tolerable to deal with the Stalkers. But this is a bit of a precarious situation. There's a lot of army now for the Protoss, so Drunkenboi can't just A-move like he was early on and take incredibly favorable engagements. One Liberator left in the backside looks a little bit awkward, but it's covering the other Liberators from Stalkers potentially blinking forward. They, of course, don't have blink yet. It's on the way, almost here, not quite. They're just going to keep leapfrogging forward and trying to eventually force Neeb to take this fight underneath the Liberators to some degree. Picks up the tanks, though. Is going to try and put those back on the ground. Adepts do transfer. They do get picked off immediately. Void Rays are going to prismatically align, coming in to pick off those Liberators. Marines are starting to dwindle out. I don't know if he's got the damage for this. Drunkenboi's lost a lot of supply in this fight. Tanks still firing away on the back end, though, and that last Void Ray is going to be able to push this back home. Drunkenboi did lift his main, though, and he's moved it over to the third, so he's still mining. He's still on what is quote-unquote the same income as before, difference being he's going to be missing out on a little bit of gas. So he continues to keep this pressure going strong, and Neeb, smartly so, takes a fourth. Well, tanks are very important to the engagement, but with things like Immortals finally stepping into the fray, they've got the damage to focus them down a little bit better than their Adept and Stalker counterparts. Not the greatest answer for the Liberators, as there's still only a Void Ray, and Blink Stalkers are okay. But the Bling Stalkers are going to have to go through that tank fire to get to said Liberators. Just carving this up really nice. I mean, for Drunkenboi, you know, let's assume his natural mine's out, which it is. He can float that over to his 4th. He's got the base advantage, as weird as that is to consider in this situation. But Neeb's hold so far has been damn impressive, I've got to say, and he's not made this easy on Drunkenboi, because I want to point out that the stress point I made from earlier, Drunkenboi really has to win. Like, there's no +2 on the way. Neeb's been continuing to get upgrades. He's been continuing to advance his tech. At some point, that is going to weigh a little too heavily over what Neeb has potential for, we'll say. But, or sorry, what Drunkenboi has potential for, excuse me. Because that tech advantage is going to go a long way, especially if he can get a 4th base up. Now, the Adepts are chasing into this. I don't think that's a fight that Neeb wanted to take. He was just scouting after all. Meanwhile, it looks like that natural base is floating over to his 4th. This is pretty important. He gets these geysers up. I don't think he realized that the gas was going to be a problem for him until just now. So Drunkenboi's only got about 100 gas to work with. Even less minerals, obviously, as he continues to produce Marines and Marines and more Marines. But if he wants those Liberators, he's going to need that gas. Phoenix is actually, I forgot that these existed. He wasn't actually using them, and uses up all the energy to pick off these SCVs. Funny enough, Drunkenboi might not realize he needs to make more SCVs because the amount he had felt perfect for 2 bases. And you could even argue he may have had a little too many, but not the case anymore. He's going to be mining, he's going to be hurt by this, it's not going to be mules. We got Templar coming into play, but only so they can become Archons, and these things can soak hits from both Liberators and tanks. I think we're hitting that point now where, like, the supply is still favoring Drunkenboi, but between the upgrades, you know, he's coming up on +3. Eventually, I would hope to see Charge and some Zealots at some point, but regardless, his army is just looking so powerful. And these Archons with 350 health, they'll soak tons of damage. Phoenixes are going to try and get on top of the Liberators, but that's just going to bait the Marines over to fight. This actually is going to try and in turn force Neeb to fight, whose army is spread out as he didn't want to engage this all at once. In doing so, splits himself a little too thin, and the Archons get focused immediately, trying to fall back towards those Liberators for safety. One does get picked off, and so do some of the Phoenix, and the Marines on the high ground have that force field down, but it's actually keeping them alive, as the South Army from Neeb can't engage on top of this. But he's mining off of a 4th, and that's the important thing, because Neeb had no money in his main, he had no money in his natural, he was starving out, and wouldn't have been able to continue holding such a magnificent defense up to this point had he not established this base. Though it's hella oversaturated. You don't need 25 probes on this base, no question about it, but what you do need is mining, period. And right now he's not looking at another base. Oh, excuse me, he actually is Neeb. What a god. Drunkenboi going to try and cut off his opponent once again, catch him in halves, as Neeb keeps segmenting his army apart. Blink for the south side will help him out a little bit. Tanks advancing slowly forward. Liberators are finding it really hard, though. If they could cut off this ramp entirely, that could make a huge world of difference, and it looks to be what Drunkenboi's finally trying to do as he starts leapfrogging forward with several of these Liberators. But coming in from behind, Neeb going completely around this. I don't know that Drunkenboi, in fact, I know Drunkenboi didn't see this. So, potentially coming in from 3 different angles. The main engagement path, which is here, the north flank from here, and the south flank with these Adepts and Stalkers. He's actually going to catch these. Really nice catch here out of Drunkenboi as he continues to fight for his life in this game, but his +3 armor upgrades for Neeb. So, as we can see, even like 100 Marines are finding it hard to deal damage to that army. Liberators and tanks, though, aren't. They've still got a lot of massive damage, so they do pick off a lot of the Stalkers. Neeb's going to be the one to tap out, and Drunkenboi perseveres and will tie up this series 1-1. Congratulations to him. I, on the other hand, need to take a deep breath and play some ads really quick, guys. So we're going to get this lobby set up. I won't dilly-dally, but we are going to take a 2-minute break, and I'll see you soon. Oh, that's not swapping back. Oh, there we go. All right, we're ready to boogie. Game number 3. It is tied up 1-1 at this point, and spawning here on the bottom right side of Ruins of Endion, we've got the red Protoss on Fire's Neeb. Of course, in the bottom left, it's going to be the blue Terran player, Flipside Tactics, Drunkenboi. Now, I gotta tell you, the last thing I really expected was for Neeb to take any losses in this series. I know this sounds really harsh against Drunkenboi, and for those who have been fans of BaseTradeTV long enough, you know I've got the biggest Terran crush on Drunkenboi, so I don't say comments like that lightly, but proving himself to be very strong with that all-in, himself very scary and dedicated with that all and did end up winning him that game. Now for Neeb, I don't know if he plans to pay him back any. It's worth noting Runes of Endion, more than any other map right now, is one I think encourages a little bit of that Tempest play we saw in Game 1. A big part of this is because you just park them out here over the dead space and deny what would be a conventional fourth base. We haven't seen enough of the map to know if players are going to knock down these rocks and take this as a more comfortable fourth rather than ones in the middle. One very common trend we've been seeing with Terran in most matchups are knocking these rocks down and then knocking these rocks down and making the bottom part of the map the engagement area rather than the top half. But of course, that's not how things always go. In the meantime, we just got those resubs ringing in. Thank you, TSA Monk, for the 13-month resub. I guess we haven't been casting for the last couple days, so it makes sense we got a bunch of the renewals coming in today. And, yeah, we're back on the casting train for a lot this weekend. Again, I mentioned it earlier. I'm just going to bring it up again. Make sure to check our schedule on our website if you haven't seen already. Not only is there the DreamHack Tours, WCS Challenger, Regional Challengers, however it's titled, but we also have the DreamHack Austin qualifiers coming up in the near future as well. And I just hope you guys are enjoying the show. Again, if you don't love my casting, or if you want to actually check out some of the other awesome casters going on, I mean, my casting's fucking amazing, so what's wrong with you? But secondly, I just want to give some credence to both Nathanias and Naniwa. I believe it's Naniwa and Morrow are also covering some matches. I know there's the DreamHack mainstream, and of course, if you are on Francais, there's O Gaming as well. I thought Take TV was doing this, but I don't actually see them on Team Liquid, so maybe not? Question mark? Alright. Anyways, as far as Neeb goes, Stargate opener is, I think, to be expected. He's done it in every game so far. One of the big advantages to a Stargate opener is it doesn't limit you to detection. I mentioned before as well that Terran in general are very, very commonly doing Widowmine drop openers. Not necessarily all in and not necessarily to do a ton of damage, but it is something that will do potentially damage and definitely scout at the same time. So it's pretty nice for a Stargate just to counter this straight up. Whether it's an Oracle for detection or whether you're getting Phoenix, they'll be able to scoop up those Widowmines that are coming, by the way. Overcharge in the mineral line should be good to go. In fact, most of his mineral line is covered. I can't see this drop from Drunkenboi getting a whole hell of a lot done. Phoenix, of course, also going to chase this away, so it makes that a little bit more uncomfortable. Shout out to Tenant's Finest for the 3-month resub as well. Thank you kindly, sir. Adepts are being chased around right now. That Widowmine wants to burrow. Does barely get it off, but now it's almost dead, which is a little bit scary. The Cyclone Liberator follow-up to this is also more and more common out of Drunkenboi, but also other players. At least the Liberators. I don't know about the Cyclone. The Cyclone, I do find a bit funny because it was a really common... Like, it was... everyone was getting a Cyclone. Everybody. It was just that auto defense. It was like you have the Terran Mothership core, if you will. It defended against everything early on. As we see here, it gets a couple good shots on the Phoenix, but has kind of actually fallen out in recent days. Meanwhile, the drop is still actually meandering around on this side of the map, so it hasn't quite given up yet. Also worth noting, Fear Dragon just messaged me, so this will go to a Game 4 no matter what, just due to the score. But maybe a Game 5. Either way, we should be able to get Fear Dragon in for the cast after this one, which would be nice. Best of 5s always lead for better series, in my opinion. After all, we did like 900 games through the Ting Open, all best of 5s. So got to see a lot of extended series over there. But the Fleet Beacon comes down pretty damn early, and so does the second Stargate. So this is what I was talking about, like whether you're going to be using it to deny a fourth, or maybe you just want to be cheeky early on. I do feel like Tempests are not bullshit. Like if you guys remember actually the last live DreamHack, like we covered States games, and on Arena he did this Tempest build that looked broken, and it wasn't proxy Tempest, it was just like disgusting to see, and it looked unbeatable. Frankly, Runes of Endion presents a lot of the same, I think troubles, we'll call them, that Arena did when it comes to this sort of dynamic, but worse made by a lot of the dead space where you put those Tempests and not have Marines chase after them. Because as we saw in game number 1, it really was like the massive amounts of Marines that started to work against Tempests, not anything else. Vikings, I find, are very just terrible units. They get focused down so easily. Ugh. 13 months and counting, Rifkin, Saw Monk. You know what, man? I'm sorry. It should, like, a year later, I should learn how to say your name. And I'm going to say that right now, and I'll probably pronounce it for the next day or two correctly, and then I'll pronounce it incorrectly all over again, and we'll start the cycle of hate. I don't do it purposely. It is just unfortunate ignorance on my part. Adepts slowly chipping away the wall. Like I mentioned before, for both players, actually, they're just going to essentially limit the top half of the map and make the engagement all about the bottom. Of course, that's what Neeb wanted. He's the one who's gone for Tempest, and even if there were more Vikings, and even if there was a ton of Liberators, I mean, the count here is admirable, don't get me wrong, but the Phoenix should be able to help fight this. They can just kind of be the dogfight for the, okay, well, that Oracle barely got the Revelation off for dying, didn't even realize they had gotten it off. But the Phoenix is going to be great. They pick up the Cyclone to start. The Tempests are a little out of position. Actually, really out of position. Neeb's going to lose one of these right off the bat. Now, I don't know if he can fight this with only one. The damage from 2 is actually pretty substantial, but just 1? He's going to kill the Liberator and have to walk away and abandon that Tempest. He might get more behind this. He's still going to invest in 2 more. With the third base set up, he can, of course, afford to continue more Stargate production, but, I mean, everything that Neeb's banking on is 2 base, well, what was 2 base Tempest, now 3 base Tempest. It kind of gets a little bit awkward. This is, I guess, if I had to define this in layman's terms, this is almost like watching a Protoss player go mech, like their version of mech. It's low production, it's slow production, but the logic is the units are incredibly strong, and that's supposed to make up for it. But I don't know. As good as Tempests are, and as much as I'll be the first person to hate this unit and this build, I like what Neeb's done. And I think he's actually in a pretty good position, all things considered, despite that bad first fight. Now, Drunkenboi has still continued to produce Vikings while this goes on. He's got a pretty hefty army out behind this. I think realizing that the attacks are going to go south, he does start heading towards the north and possibly looking to break down these rocks. But, I mean, he stayed on 2 bases. This was a 2-base Terran build through and through. No sign of a third CC, no missile turrets protecting his mineral lines. I mean, I think for Drunkenboi, there was not really the long game in mind. Of course, the best part about taking fights out here on the north side as we zoom out extra to find you is there's a lot of area for Marines to run around. It is going to be very hard for Tempest to venture away from the safety of these waters to actually come out here and engage the Bioarmy. So this may end up just being Neeb saying, screw it, I don't need to fight you, I can still just chip away through the south. But not if it comes down to a race. Also, let's not forget these Tempests are probably going to kill, I'd say, a good 1/4 of the army before they actually break down the rocks. We'll just chip away at Marines and Vikings from far away with said Tempests. Neeb, of course, has no idea this is coming until just now, so a little bit awkward for him, but he does take out 1 Viking immediately. Can focus on these siege tanks as well. Yeah, nicely done. There's rocks to the north, which are sometimes easy to forget about, but again, Neeb's got this covered. He's got a pylon here to see this coming. He really wants those rocks up, though, to keep this army from being able to stim forward and underneath those Tempests. As we see, it gets a little bit awkward as he once again pushes himself out of position. Now, 4 Tempests can still fight this pretty easily. As we see, knocking down those Vikings, that +1 weapons on the Tempest helping out a ton. But now that the rocks are down, this is both good and bad for Drunkenboi. Good because his ground army can get involved with the fight, but so can Neeb's. In fact, Neeb with these stalkers could just focus on top of the Vikings, perhaps. They're just going to trade out versus the Marines. Drunkenboi continue to advance forward here with this push. Neeb now stuck in a bit of a corner, in a bit of an awkward spot with a very strange build backing him on this, as he does try to go to Blink. He tries to go to upgrades behind this, but all things considered, he's quote-unquote behind due to his dedication of these Tempests. But those air quotes are there because this is still a very strong unit. And I'm not trying to build this up to be something greater than it is, and I'm going to be the last person to say OP. I'll be the first person to say bullshit, maybe. But Tempests are certainly not OP, and they've got their counters. With a lot of Marines, Vikings, and Liberators, that's what Drunkenboi's thinking on. But if Neeb's recognized that Drunkenboi is kind of focusing all of his attention towards these Tempests, if this game's going to go in tunnel vision favor, I actually feel a lot better for Neeb, because he can start transitioning out of this, get a couple of Archons, maybe go for a Storm here and there. I mean, goodness knows the Storm's going to absolutely wipe out like over half of Drunkenboi's army. He does lift his main over to the 3rd, by the way, plants that down, is going to try and get some gas going here momentarily, as again, with Vikings and Liberators being so necessary, it's a huge part of his production, especially with the oversaturation being what it is. He's going to turn on this base as well, and I guess maybe move another base, or actually take a 3rd. I'm unsure which, but at least he's created the option and the opportunity. But I fear for Drunkenboi, we have the similar situation to last game, where he set up for this crazy all-in, and it's probably going to just barely not work. I mean, it worked for him last time, but don't get me wrong, like, the initial fights were bad and went very much not in his favor. This time around, all these Marines are good against the air. We'll see if the ground army for Neeb's good enough to fight this. He does have like 1-1-1 across the board for upgrades, but that's not plasma shields, that's air weapon upgrades. So these Tempests hitting a little bit harder than they normally do versus non-massive targets. 33 a shot. Oops, sorry, wrong button. The Immortals actually don't really have a lot of bearing in this, other than the fact that they soak a lot of damage. The Tempest firing from very far away, meaning that these Vikings are hardly part of the fight. Liberators siege up, sure, but this is actually Neeb just slowly backing away, and this army supply lead starts to extend to a pretty insane manner. Now, of course, a couple of Tempests getting focused down on the south side, but that's the entire army of Drunkenboi, and that is going to be game. Neeb now taking a nice 2-1 lead here in the series. And now, I'm going to try and get Fear Dragon with me. So, I'm going to get this lobby up. I'm going to tell the guys we'll need a moment. So, I know I just played ads, and I don't want to scumbag you guys. But to get Fear Dragon on the call with me, I'm going to go to a break. We'll see you soon. We are going to get into game number 4 here in the series. As mentioned before, guys, it is a best of 5. So that's currently what's up here on the overlay. If you're just joining us, like Fear Dragon, to give a quick update, it is a 2-1 in the favor of this gentleman spawning in the bottom left side of the map. It is going to be the red Protoss Neeb.
And his opponent up here in the top left, we have the purple Terran player from Flipside Tactics. It's Drunkenboi.
So it's a little bit frustrating with the spawn locations, and even after playing on this map several times, I still barely understand them. But just so people know, this map is like almost set up to be cross-spawn in quadrants. Obviously, it's not. It's vertical spawns. But to explain really quick, the 3 possible spots Neeb could have spawned in were over here, and where he actually spawned. So it's not. The same thing goes for his opponent, over here, or where he actually spawned. So you're never going to have to spawn into this map, in a 1v1 at least, and worry about your opponent being right next door. But boy, is it frustrating, because as they expand towards their thirds, they are going to be right next door to one another.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder. I caught the tail end of that whole Neeb game where he did a much, much faster teching up into the Tempest build. And I almost wonder, like, do you think that would be something that could be pretty effective on this map, especially if they just start expanding toward each other even further and further, and it's like, okay, well, if Drunkenboi wants to take that close by third expansion where he would naturally be expanding into Neeb, Tempest harassment would just absolutely slaughter that base.
Oh yeah, just
makes it not an option. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we'll see it go that direction or not. I think Tempests are just more of a late game answer to what Liberators bring when you're not on a map like Orena or Ruins of Endion. And Neeb's certainly a good enough player to play a lot of other strategies. I mean, to be honest, there are a few players I can think of that they get good with one build and then rely on that forever. Neeb is definitely not one of these guys. But Drunkenboi, in the last 2 games, I know you caught some of the last one, I don't know if you saw game 2, where he actually won the match, but he's been very dedicated to these 2 base all-ins and, you know, floating mains over to the thirds. So we may not see this be a problem at all, depending on how this goes.
You know, Drunkenboi has been doing that a lot lately. He is, I would almost say it's like a stylistic thing for him at this point, where he doesn't build a third orbital. He floats it from his main. It's
not even just him, though. I mean, we're seeing a lot of really good Koreans do this as well. And I'm not saying that, like, oh my god, he's copycatting or anything, but it's just a good strategy, because right now, Protoss, you know, arguably is, like, the weakest race. I say arguably because obviously there's going to be bias from some. I think it is right now. We're seeing results kind of reflect that in a lot of situations. But it is particularly good in this matchup. And, oh, why would you attack? You son of a bitch.
Well, Neeb is going to get revenge on that.
Savage. Anyways, my point I was going to follow up with is right now we're actually seeing Protoss still look good versus Terran. They've been strong ever since the first conception of the Adept. The recent changes with the nerfs to damage initially were very painful, but then we saw this got made up with various types of all-ins. And I think even the Immortal, man, like just that extra shield, there's a lot of things going well for Protoss that I'm going to be the last person to call them broken. But I think a lot of these 2-base builds out of Drunkenboi are the fact that you don't want to fight that late game Protoss ever. You don't want to have to go against the Tempest. You don't want to have to deal with Disruptors, Storms. Like, it's going to be a bad time if you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Drunkenboi, I think, is a sort of a master of going for those kind of weird pushes and just doing things that are maybe sometimes radically different than you normally see from a Terran player, and sometimes just like subtly different. So if there's a player that I would really want to see like some kind of weird forms of aggression, it'd be from Drunkenboi. All right, well, looks like, as you were saying, Neeb starting to get out that Immortal count, getting out a Warp Prism as well, and adding on a lot of gateways. I'm kind of curious if he's looking to get a bit aggressive off of just 2 bases, because this is getting up to the point where we're at 7 warp gates, and this is enough to do a really big depth pressure.
I mean, there's a literal like, just block of his base that is all gateways. It's got the Artosius pylon,
by the way. Oh, God.
Double shots fired. High five.
How you can end this game and defeat all of the aggression, kill that one pylon with a drop.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at this for Neeb, and this is certainly a powerful move to make. But Drunkenboi, well, he didn't play super greedy. He's played the same way he has every game so far, with a minus part of I guess, no Cyclone. So, I mean, he's got units on the field. He's going to have a Liberator in play, but I don't know if he can contest 7 Warpins at a time.
This is, I don't really see how exactly this is going to work out very well for Drunkenboi. His natural expansion, I almost kind of feel like he just needs to lift it off and leave, because I don't think he can defend it down there. Oh, this Liberator. Oh, this Liberator is going to be so important. He does not want to lose that for this defense.
Yeah, I guess I kind of forgot there's rock towers all over the place. Like, he could have knocked those down and bought himself a lot of time had he realized this was coming soon enough. He's going to do that to his main, but it's too late now. SCVs get pulled into this. There's a decent amount of damage with those Marines, but the army supply favors Neeb in a big way. Liberator comes down. You know, he actually picks off the last couple of Stalkers. Oh, but the Stalkers get picked up in the Warp Prism. Keeps us alive either way, and Neeb just rolls right over top of Drunkenboi. That's going to be game. That's going to be series.
There's no way you really can contend with that after that. Like, once you start adding the micro, Neeb just had that game. Drunkenboi, unfortunately, not going to be advancing on, but big congratulations to Neeb. I think he's going to play versus the winner of Scarlet versus Huck.
Yes. So my plan initially was to follow that, because I want to see more Neeb, but also Scarlet versus Huck. But I'm also not entirely 100% sure on how format for this and rounds and things are going to go. So we're going to have to find that out in the meantime. Ravi, though, I got to ask you something, man.
What's up?
Do you got a suit you can put on?
I do have a suit I can put on. I was going to actually surprise everyone.
We're going to go on break.
Should I go get it?
Go get it, and then let me use your green screen when you return, and we'll get some sick backdrops going. We're gonna pro this up.
You're not going to put a penis behind me, right?
Well, I wasn't going to at first.
God damn it. All right. Well.
All right. You go get dressed up, man. We got a few minutes we're going to have to wait for anyway. So, while he does that, guys, we're going to, I guess, just go to a break. I'll just play the short 2-minute ads first. We may go to an extended break of no ads, but just a break time when we return. Because I don't know how much of what's going on, but, yeah, we'll be back in a few minutes. So, see you guys soon-ish. Oh, of course, before I do go, I would like to once again give shout-outs to the other streams currently casting. Again, you got O Gaming for French, you get Nathanius also casting in English, 91 Morrow casting in English, and of course the DreamHack stream as well. So if you guys haven't checked those other streams out, there's a lot of other matches being covered. We're going to be covering as much as we can tonight, so plenty of games to pick from, plenty of streams to pick from. I'll see you guys in a bit.